Hello, everybody. It's your boy, Grandma fucking Dread again. Basically, addressing a question I get asked all the time, and that is why I became an atheist. Now, I know this is going to be another one of those, as it were, long-winded rants, but I'm going to try to make this as brief as possible. My friend Tiggs always asks me why I don't make mundane rants, had soy chips, they tasted lush type deals, but that's just not me. She knows it's not me as well. Back to the subject at hand, why I became an atheist. It was simple for me, really. Became extremely disillusioned with all religion. Not just Christianity, but Islam and Judaism. The main gripes I had was how in most major religions you're expected to base all your decisions solely upon faith. And to me, that couldn't happen. I mean, I'm a scientific person. I like evidence as to what exists and what doesn't, and what happens and what doesn't. And through exploring different religions, every time I ask questions of priests, deacons, rabbis, clerics, what have you, I got the same answer. You don't have enough faith. And to me, it was not that I didn't have enough faith, it's just they didn't have enough in the way of answers, Once I'm getting to questions that they couldn't explain, it became an issue of my faith, not of their inability to give me an explanation for my question, Another beef I had with religion was the fact that everywhere religion is really, really tantamount is always a place of poor education. Now, I came from areas of New York City where education wasn't the main focus. There was high dropout rates, higher crime rate, those sort of things, higher poverty rates. I grew up on the Lower East Side of Manhattan and in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, and East New York, Brooklyn. All three at the time were high crime areas, and the going idea about religion was Christianity and everything else was the devil. And that just wasn't an idea that I could go through. I mean, I even got in trouble at home via this ideal. My mother was a devout Christian. Unfortunately for her, she had a son that just wouldn't digest whatever was fed to him. And I'd get in trouble for reading the Quran. I'd get in trouble for reading the Torah. I'd get in trouble for reading the Upanishads or reading about Buddhism. And that helped my disillusion with religion. It seemed that whenever a person was down or whenever a person didn't have the wherewithal to see things for himself, it seemed that's when religion just creeped in to answer all their questions or to make them feel better. And to me, that wasn't anything better than a drug. My second beef with religion was that the big three, as it were, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, the Abrahamic faiths, were always in competition with each other. When a Christian can learn from the Quran and a Muslim could learn from the Torah, so there shouldn't have been any competition. It just seemed like all of their holy men were basically standing around like 5-year-olds saying, my heavenly father can beat up your heavenly father. And it just sounded stupid to me, Another thing, too, with religion that just did not sit, as far as I'm concerned, was the fact that the people are listening to whatever their holy men tell them to. They are listening to other men's interpretations of what's supposed to be a holy or noble book. However, those holy men seem to also throw in their own ideas apart from the book. And when people are weak-minded enough to follow that without any extra research, any extra thought, you get things like radicals and evangelical Christians, radical rabbis, and jihadist clerics who are able to influence mass groups of people into doing things that they know is against the majority of their faith by simply emphasizing certain books and certain teachers and certain prophets' words more than others. Take, for instance, Fred Phelps and the Westboro Baptist Church. They emphasize the parts of their religion that make it okay to discriminate against people because of their sexual orientation, which in my belief is something that you're born with. But they quickly push to the background those parts of the Bible that say to love your neighbor as yourself. And to me that just seemed like hypocrisy. I can't sit back and cherry pick what I want to follow from a religion and not acknowledge the bad sides. It was the same with ayats in the Quran that admonish men to beat their wives. I tiptoed around it, I danced around it, and there was nothing that I could find that said that this is right. There was nothing that I could honestly in my mind force myself to believe that it would be right to put my hands on the woman I love out of anger as to discipline her and keep her on the right path. Just didn't work for me. The same with the Bible, and basically what I felt was heaven must have come up on under some new ownership or new management between the Old Testament and the New, saying that it's okay to take multiple wives, referring to women as the weaker vessel, to be treated as such just seemed wrong to me. But to condone things such as killing and warfare, and then a few books later, oh no, that's wrong. It seemed like if a God is supposed to be all-seeing and all-knowing, knowing what happens on both ends of time, you already know that this is going to be a fucked up outcome, so why are you telling people to do it anyway? Or you already know that you're going to change your opinion, so why are you telling people to do it now, and then it has to be wrong later on? These things didn't jibe well for me as far as religion and faith went. Excuse me. And the last thing that got me about religion was how religion was supposed to be separate from the state. In most religious books, it says that religion is no part of the state's affairs in different ways, Caesar's things to Caesar, God's things to God, etc. But in most countries on the planet, religion has seemed to worm its way into how they do things, and the same is true here in the United States. We've got debates upon abortion, which, even though I'm against abortion, I'm pro a woman's right to choose. Debates on gay marriage, which to me is let them marry. If evolution has seen fit to make people to for the human race to progress to the point where some people like their own sex, then guess what? That's okay by my book. I'm not sleeping with another man, so why the hell should I care? You know, those debates, religion is seeming to find its way farther and farther into, when we should just be focused on raw data. You know, we should just be focused on the scientific data of the situation and the well-being of those involved. And that's all. You know, so this is why I became disillusioned with religion, and this is why I'm an atheist today. I've been an atheist since I was 16 years old. That's 11 years so far, you know, longer than I've been straight edge and longer than I've been vegetarian. Excuse me. People normally pose the question or pose the statement down here saying that I'm an atheist, so I have no morals and principles, which is complete bullshit in my opinion. It's complete bullshit. Just period. I'm straight edge. I have more morals and principles than most people. You know, how is my refusing to give worship to an invisible man in the sky reflect on how I treat others or how I live my life? I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do any illegal drugs, I don't engage in promiscuous sex. You know, I even have morals and principles when it comes to how we treat animals. See? That's Masheki. That's my little man. He runs with me. Anywho, you know, I didn't become an atheist so I could go out and be promiscuous. You don't need to become an atheist to do that. I know Christians who do that. I know Christians that deal drugs. I know Muslims that deal drugs. I know Jews that deal drugs. I know Christians, Muslims, and Jews that sleep around. I know Christians, Muslims, and Jews that steal, rob, and kill, you know, not because their religion tells them to, but just because they're shitty people. You know, I know one kid, unfortunately, who rolls his marijuana on the Bible so it'll be blessed weed. You know, their religion and their faith does not stop them from doing what they do. In fact, I know people who feel that if they go to confession, or if they go to their 5 daily prayers, or if they're in church on Sunday, they're forgiven for all their sins, but come Monday morning, they're out there doing things contrary to their beliefs anyway. So how does me being an atheist make me a bad person? That's the question I'm posing to everybody here. That's the question I want them to answer for me. As you know, I'm Grim the motherfucking Dreadly, throwing it up to Wolf Blood Crew, throwing it up to Straight Edge, throwing it up to the X-Men. Remember, kill your local drug dealer. Deuces, I'm out.